So a friend came over to my house recently and asked me to build a deck for him, or at least help him build a deck. And despite the fact that I said that I would never do that again, I apparently was lying. Alrighty, I'm gonna preface this with, at least I didn't build Ovika again. Now, I know the bar for really dumb things I've built for my friends, starting at 6 mana, you win the game effectively, is not really a great bar to set. But I promise you, this will earn you fewer enemies. At least I think. I hope. So let's talk about Araumi of the Dead Tide. Alrighty, Araumi of the Dead Tide is a legendary merfolk wizard that says we can exile cards from our graveyard equal to the number of opponents we have, so usually it's going to be 3. Then a creature in our graveyard gains Encore until the end of the turn. The Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. So, what does this mean? Well, Encore says that we will spawn a creature token for every opponent we have, and then the creature tokens will gain haste. Now, this is really stupid, nightmarishly stupid, because this means if we were to pull out, I don't know, a Massacre Worm, we would be pulling out 3 Massacre Worms. That would make the entire board for our opponents get -6, -6. And then for every creature our opponents had, they would burn for 6 life. Now, you would be perfectly fine, and it would be perfectly reasonable and understandable if you clicked off the video right now because you saw that I was brewing another monster that desperately needed to be going away, but no, you're gonna keep your friends off to this, I swear, trust me. You see, the strategy we're gonna be going for, aside from control, is, group discard. That's better, right? This is better, right? Group discard is better than just winning with combo, right? No? Okay, I don't know what to do then, but I do got to talk about the deck still. I'm legally obligated to. So let's talk about Hectai's Burglar Rat and Virus Beetle and the Nezami Informant. All of these make each opponent discard 1 card from their hand. But if our commander encores them for 2 mana, our opponents will each discard 3 cards from their hand. That's fun, right? You enjoy that. That's what makes Magic the Gathering fun for you. Me telling you you're not allowed to play your deck. Right? Okay, well, what if instead we had discard that burned you to death from Scythe Scepter? Does that make you have more fun with the game? What about if it was discard that also drew me cards, like with Arbiter of Woe? What if the discard could sometimes get me a swamp when I needed it? What if the discard burned you for 6 mana and everybody drew nothing and just discarded 6 cards, effectively getting rid of their entire hand all at once? Or just allowed me to draw cards myself by summoning things in my grave that allow me to draw cards? Because Junji does all those things. Junji can reanimate things or make everybody discard cards. This is fun, right? And putting those cards in the graveyard can sometimes be a troubling thing to do, so why not use Cemetery Tempering to not only get a free cast every now and again, but also allow you to mill 3 cards every turn, or a Stitcher Supplier to mill 3 cards now, or 6 cards total, or like 18 cards if we pull it up with our commander's ability, filling our grave perfectly with everything we possibly could want. And I know putting things in the graveyard and relying on the commander is a silly strategy, so let's run an Ever After and a Coiling Rebirth, and even a Victimize, so that we can reanimate 2 creatures out of our grave at once that have a little more staying power. And a Dread Return, so we can reanimate 1 creature, and then if we pull out all the creatures with our commander, because that gives us 3 creatures that will die at the end of the turn anyway, why not sacrifice all those creatures to Dread Return to flash it back from the graveyard? Then we have Phyrexian Delver, who punishes us a lot for playing him, but also gives us 3 reanimates instantaneously when we do. We're also going to be running a Teferi's Veil, a card that allows our creatures to phase out at the end of combat. Because creature tokens are allowed to phase out because it is not leaving the battlefield, the tokens will come back and never die. Teferi's Veil allows us to permanently keep all the creatures that our commander grabs, and that's just kind of broken. We should also talk about cards that will help us win the game. Gyruda, Doom of the Depths. When it enters the battlefield, every player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard, and then we put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from among them onto the battlefield under our control. Now, when we use this the first time, this fills up our grave nicely for what the commander is trying to do, and it can sometimes get us a pretty good card. But if we revive it with our commander, legendary rule kills a bunch of our Krakens, we don't have to give a shit about that, because what we get the ability to do here is mill our opponents for 12, and then revive the 3 best creatures from all of those 12. Technically. That's not exactly how it works. I'm explaining it badly, but functionally in the game, that is how it's going to feel. Then we have Scion of Darkness. This guy can reanimate creatures from our opponent's graveyard, and he's got cycling, so we can get him in our own graveyard pretty easy. Then we have my favorite mainstays of Sepulcher and Diluvian Primordial. Both of these allow us to get the best cards out of our opponent's graveyards all at once. I want you to imagine the best 3 sorceries and instants from every opponent's graveyards all happening at the same time. 9 spells being cast for free. I adore that. Our opponents will not adore that. They will argue this card should be banned from Magic the Gathering. And you will argue that they are wrong, because this is a quarter. This is a quarter and a dream. And all they have is a quarter of a dream. But we can also just end the game basically instantly by using a Gary. A Grey Merchant of Asphodel will burn our opponents for 2 life for every 2 pips that are on the board. I'm explaining that wrong again because, well, it's 1 life per pip. Every black pip on our board will burn our opponents. So imagine the world where you reanimate 3 Garys from the grave using the commander. All the Garys see each other, and with our commander and the Garys together, that is 7 pips minimum. And with 7 pips minimum, each Gary will burn each opponent for 21. And then we will gain 63 life. I just think it's neat. We're going to be running a 13-card draw engine because our draw package is so important to getting what we need out of the deck. We're going to be running a myriad of looters like Bonded Fetch, Merfolk Looter, Thought Courier, Vohar Vidalian Desecrator, and of course, Rona the Herald of Invasion. All of these allow us to draw a card and then discard a card, and some of them have extra text written on them, like the Bonded Fetch being able to have haste. But if we look at Merfolk Looter, this is kind of the baseline for what we're looking for. But Obsessive Stitcher does what Merfolk Looter and Thought Courier do, while also allowing us to revive creatures from the graveyard on its own, extending our reanimation package while also giving us more ways to loot. Then we have Hostile Negotiations. This card is black Factor Fiction. We're also running blue Factor Fiction. Both of these make our opponents look at cards in 2 piles, select a pile, and hand the pile to us. The other pile goes to the graveyard, which, as it turns out, is exactly where we want it to be. We also need to talk about this broken dude, Floating Dream Zabura. Now, at 2 mana and only drawing us 1 card when he enters the graveyard, that may seem like that's not very powerful, but I need you to understand that we will be summoning 3 of these, and all of them will trigger in our grave because of Encore. And then when they do, well, we will be drawing 9 cards. We will be paying 2 mana with our commander to exile 3 cards from our grave to draw 9 cards at the end of the turn. This thing is absolutely busted. Let's also play a Dihada's Ploy, allowing us to draw 2 and discard 1, and with Jumpstart, we can draw 2 and discard 1 again later on in the game. Then we have Forbidden Alchemy, allowing us to draw 4 and discard, well, a bunch? It technically lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library and then put 1 of them in our hand and the rest in our graveyard, which is pretty hefty for 3 mana, especially with that giant flashback ability. But again, we need cards in our graveyard more than we need them in our hand, and 3 cards in the grave is exactly what our commander needs in order to function. Let's also play an Ancient Evacuation, or Excavation. Yeah, Excavation. That's how to say this one. Draw cards equal to the number of cards currently in our hand, and then discard every single thing that we need. We discard cards equal to the number of cards we drew. It also has basic land cycling, so we can throw this away to get a land if we desperately need it, and it allows us to lower our deck's land count. Now, removal is where things are going to get a little stupid. And again, I feel like cards like Ancient Excavation, being able to put so many things in our graveyard, make cards like Plaguecrafter, Demon's Disciple, and also Fleshbag Marauder way more dangerous. And hell, Gaia von Balezar is also in here. So all of these read basically the same thing. When it enters the battlefield, everybody sacrifices a creature. Gaius has a little more text on him, but this effectively means we will be losing our, Fleshbag Marauder style creatures. If our commander revives a Fleshbag Marauder, 3 creatures will be sacrificed by each opponent. But if we have Gaius von Balezar, then we can choose to make everybody sacrifice creatures, or we can choose to make people sacrifice enchantments. Now note, if we summon Gaius von Balezar from the grave, his abilities will allow him to force our opponents to sacrifice either tokens or non-token creatures, but he can make our opponent sacrifice enchantments. And since our deck is only running 2 enchantments, we should be able to make perfectly good use of this card, even when he would otherwise hurt us. Let's also run a Vile Mutilator, because this makes our opponent sacrifice an enchantment each, and also sacrifice a creature each. So if we revive this from the grave with our commander, that's 3 creatures and 3 enchantments, totaling up to 6 cards for the 7 mana we spent. Honestly, I think that's a pretty decent investment. Duskmangler also gets rid of 6 cards, because it gets rid of a card from every opponent, and then it gets rid of a card from every opponent's hand all at once. But if we were to play this with our commander, then that 6 cards would turn into 18 cards of advantage, because each opponent would sacrifice 3 creatures, discard 3 cards, and lose 12 life. A cruel ultimatum for every single opponent whenever we get this out with our commander. Let's also play Feed the Swarm so that we can get rid of problematic enchantments without having to worry about it being with a creature. Ravenous Chupacabra to get rid of creatures at a pretty decent mana cost. And then for 1 more mana, a Noxious Gearhulk to do the same thing, but to gain us life. Then we have Eldest Reborn, which can make every opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, then make them all discard a card, then lets us put a creature or planeswalker from our graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. This can steal things from our opponent's graveyard, but it can also let us reanimate pretty strong things from our graveyard, like the Butcher of Malakir, a creature that says if we sacrifice a creature, then all of our opponents sacrifice 1 with us. But wait, I heard you say, doesn't that mean that our commander is going to make our opponent sacrifice 3 creatures every single turn? Yes. Yes. Yes, that is exactly what happens. No, you didn't need friends. You need cardboard. And this card replaces friends with cardboard. I gotta talk about this thing. This thing is broken. This thing is busted. Volatile Stormdrake. Just put it in play, steal your opponent's favorite thing, and then give them the Stormdrake. But that's not what we're going to be doing. Oh, no. We are going to be getting 3 Stormdrakes with our commander, getting 12 energy, stealing 3 creatures from our opponents, handing them a creature that they will not be using because it will be dead, and then we will keep our favorite cards from our opponents. This will get us friends, and we will keep them, like we kept their creatures. And if you spend 7 mana to reanimate it from the graveyard with the commander, our opponents are not sacrificing 3 creatures at the end of the turn. They are sacrificing 9, because every Butcher of Malakir will see every other Butcher of Malakir's ability. Each Butcher dying will trigger 2 other Butchers, leading to 9 creatures getting completely disappeared. And then we have our ways to get rid of spells on the stack. We are in blue, so Refute and Sinister Sabotage will be able to counter spells when we need them. Also, these can throw cards in our graveyard, which is exactly what our deck wants to see. Then we have a Negate, which can be used to get rid of non-creature spells. Again, a thing that we usually would be afraid of in a Reanimation deck that we can just ignore as long as we can hold up a Negate. Let's also run a bunch of board wipes in here to make sure we can keep the board squeaky clean. I need to show you Singularity Rupture. I need you to look very closely at Singularity Rupture. This is a 20-cent card that makes everybody mill half their library. Milling half your library does not make you lose the game. In fact, in 99% of circumstances, it does not even get you close to losing the game. But we are already making our opponents discard resources throughout the game. So this card will cause immense psychic damage. The minute we play this, Everybody is going to be pointing fingers at us and hating us. But that doesn't matter, because they will have nothing. And when they have nothing, they can jeer at us all they want. They are left with nothing. They have no weapons with which to hurt us except their words. And we have all the guns. The guns are called Singularity Rupture. No, actually, realistically, they're called Massacre Worm. So Massacre Worm says when it enters, all creatures the opponent's control get -2/-2 until end of turn. I already mentioned what happens when we spawn 6 of these or 3 of these and make everything lose 6 power and toughness, and then making our opponents lose 6 life per thing they lose. That basically wins us the game in most scenarios. Necromantic Selection's another basic way to wipe the board, and it can also reanimate stuff. That's pretty good. And an Archfiend of Sorrows is just a Massacre Worm that costs 1 more mana, but does not have the ability to drain life. It's just a strictly worse Massacre Worm we are running for redundancy. Alrighty, it's time to talk about mana, and we are using a lot of mainstay staples here. We're going to be using the Charcoal Diamond, Fractured Power Stone, Milken, Prismatic Lens, Sky Diamond, and Arcane Signet, as they are all basically 2-mana mana rocks. The Deranged Assistant is as well, but the Deranged Assistant can also mill us a card. Milken does that too. So we have 2 of our mana rocks that can mill us, but they are very susceptible to board wipes. We are going to be running some stuff that's a little safer though. So Wayfarer's Bauble does give us access to a land from the deck, which is basically the safest kind of ramp you can have, and Sad Robot does the same thing. But in this deck, Sad Robot, well, we can animate it with our commander. So not only do we get to get a basic land out and then draw a card if it dies, but we can get 3 basic lands for the price of 4 mana, and then draw 3 cards when they kill themselves. 4 mana to ramp for 3 and draw 3 is like, what? Just a shit ton of Wayfarer's Baubles and Divinations together, having the world's worst baby. That's what Sad Robot does in this deck. Then we have Convergence of Dominion, a card that is surprisingly only 52 cents. We can pay 3 mana and tap it to mill 3 cards when we need, but the big thing this is good for is lowering the cost of activated abilities in our graveyard by 2. And Encore is an activated ability in the graveyard. This is basically Graveyard Ramp. As for lands, we're going lower than normal. I'm going to be running 35 lands in this deck, but I think we should not be running too terribly low on lands. As for lands, let's go ahead and run 36 of them, 11 swamps and 7 islands. I would normally run more lands, but I found that with this deck, whenever we are trying to dig through our stuff, we want more live creatures, and we are running a very hefty draw engine, so I figured that should get us to what we need, at least in this particular instance. Our mana curve is also kinda low, all things considered, and that's not terrible. Then we have a Choked Estuary for our untapped lands, Command Tower, Darkwater Catacombs, Exotic Orchard, Tainted Isle, and Sunken Hollow. All of these come into play untapped, and that makes them good lands. We have Temple of the Sea as our tapped land to get a scry early, and then we have a Fetid Pools, another tapped land, but this one has cycling, which our deck really wants to see. Then we have our fetching lands. Now, we're running every fetching land I can manage, because normally we'd only run a couple of these for color fixing, but in this deck, we want as many fetching lands as we can get so that we can get things into the graveyard. So without further ado, let's go into each of these. Now, Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Escape Tunnel, and Vibrant Cityscape are all the same card. Sack them, get a land out of your deck, and then throw the land in your graveyard away with our commander. Then we have Ash Barrens, which we can discard in order to get a land from our deck into our hand, and a Myriad Landscape that can ramp us by 2 whenever we need it, or ramp us by 1 because it technically gets rid of itself, but yeah, you know what I mean. Then for our utility lands, let's go ahead and run a Barren Moor and a Lonely Sandbar because they can be cycled when we get mana flooded, a Port of Carfell to give us another way to reanimate cards, and a Nephalia Drown Yard so that we can mill ourselves when we have an excess of mana, and we do not have a surplus of cards in the grave to choose from or to throw away for our commander's ability. And that does it for everything in the deck. Now all we gotta do is talk about how to play it. Alrighty, let's talk opening turns. We really want to get one of our looters early, so Thought Courier and Merfolk Looter are great. Malboro is also great to see early because we can swamp cycle this, so I think we have a pretty good opening hand. We do miss the ability to use Wayfarer's Bauble on curve, But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Let's go ahead and open up with our first turn, play an escape tunnel, and crack it to go into our library and get ourselves an island. Next turn's up, and we can go ahead and play a swamp, tap 2, and get Thought Courier out on the board. Now we can start doing the Merfolk Looter thing pretty quickly. Moving into our next turn, and we have the Deranged Assistant in our hand, available for play. Let's go ahead and play that island, tap 2, play the Deranged Assistant, tap 1, play the Wayfarer's Bauble, tap the Thought Courier to draw a card, and then throw away a creature in our hand. I say we get rid of the Malboro so that we can reanimate it later, but honestly, you could also make an argument that we don't need the Lonely Sandbar, but it's got cycling. I'll throw away the Sandbar because we could use the Malboro to get a swamp. Moving into the next turn, let's go ahead and play our Sunken Hollow. And I want to get the commander out now so that we can use it when the time comes. We can then use our Deranged Assistant to fill our graveyard just a little bit more, milling this Phyrexian Delver, and we can tap our Thought Courier to draw 1 and get rid of that Diluvian Primordial, setting up our graveyard for the follow-up turn. Moving into turn 5, let's go ahead and play that Swamp we drew, tap the Thought Courier to draw 1. Ooh, that was a Terramorphic. I would have preferred to have that in the grave, but we'll throw it away, and then we'll tap the Deranged Assistant to mill 1 and have access to some extra mana. Now, let's see here. Ooh, did we? No. We don't want to. I mean, we already milled. The Terramorphic isn't what we get. What we get rid of is the Marlboro. That's what we get rid of. Because what we're going to do is we're going to tap our commander and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are going to reanimate 3 Phyrexian Delvers. These Delvers will reanimate Diluvian Primordial and Marlboro for us, cutting our life points by a lot, but getting rid of these cards in exile. And of course, the Defilers will go away as well at the end of the turn. But now we've made our opponents discard a lot of cards, and we've stolen their best instants and sorceries from their grave, and at turn 5, they've probably casted something that was pretty neat. Let's move on to turn 6, play the Terramorphic Expanse and crack it to go ahead and get that land in our graveyard. We do need to make sure that we are constantly filling our grave with stuff. Let's then tap the Deranged Assistant to mill a card, and let's tap the Thought Courier to draw 1 and mill 1, or discard 1. Here's where we have to take a guess. If indeed our opponents are sitting pretty with a bunch of creatures, then we get rid of the plaguecrafter. If they are not, then we get rid of the virus beetle. Let's assume that they've set up boards. It is turn 6, and then let's pay 2 and crack the Wayfarer's Bauble. The Wayfarer's Bauble goes into our library and gives ourselves a swamp, which does ramp us, but most importantly, it puts the last card in our grave, so that we can reanimate not 1, not 2, but 3 plaguecrafters, which will all automatically kill themselves, but will also burn our opponents out of all of their creature resources. Now, in the event that one of our opponents had a really good card in their graveyard now, a good instant or sorcery that we wanted to steal, we would throw away the Diluvian Primordial, knowing that we would be able to do the mass reanimate of that later. But for now, we don't really need it. So moving into turn 7, we can go ahead and tap the Deranged Assistant to mill 1. That puts a Nezami Informant in our grave. Perfect. Let's tap the Thought Courier to draw 1 and then discard 1. We'll discard that Virus Beetle. And then we can pay 1, 2, 3 to play Muldrifter, drawing 2, and auto-killing the Muldrifter. And now that we've done that, we can go ahead and play 1, and let's do... Man, I want to do Gingy really bad. But I feel like the better thing to do is to feed the Swarm and get rid of one of our opponent's problematic cards, and then pay 2, and let's pull the Virus Beetle out of the grave, getting rid of these guys here, discarding everything our opponents have, probably just taking them out of the game at this point, because by turn 7, unless people have been constantly drawing cards, their resources are dwindling hard. Like, we're in a very stupidly strong position here. But if for some reason our opponents are still around, we can draw our Citrus Supplier, milling 1, 2, 3. Ooh, we got rid of Floating Dream Zubura. I don't think I actually mentioned this in the video as well as I should have. So editor's note, go and talk about Floating Dream Zubura. But this will let us draw a stupid number of cards. Check this out. We tap our Duder here, Deranged Assistant, to mill 1. That gets rid of Gaius. Our graveyard is 3 cards deep. Let's tap Thought Courier to draw 1 and discard 1. Let's just discard this Merfolk Looter. That's entirely fine. Then we're going to use our commander to get rid of 1, 2, 3, and then summon all of the Floating Dream Zaburas. When we summon the Floating Dream Zaburas, they are going to do something special. They are going to die for our sins. When the Floating Dream Zaburas die, when they do that, each Floating Dream Zabura will draw us a card for each Zabura that was put into a graveyard from play this turn. And because it happens not when he dies, but when he's put into a graveyard from play, well, I just double-checked the ruling on it, but yes, we will draw 9 cards. So at the end of this turn, our opponents have lost so many cards, but we uniquely will draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we can refill our grave with whatever we need, and we are all set for the rest of the game. Everything's honky-dory. And remember, this whole time, we've been dealing 9 damage every turn with our Marlborough and our Diluvian Primordial. So people are starting to hurt quite a lot. Honestly, I'm super happy with how this deck has come out. If you're wanting to upgrade this deck, then obviously you need even more looters, and Likeness Looter, for some reason, has gone up in price a lot. He's at $1 right now, but like, I swear to God, last night when I looked at him, he was sitting at $5 for some reason. That's why he hasn't made his way into any decks recently. It's really kind of agitating. Then we have Grave Titan, a card that if we animate out of our grave will spawn not 6, but 12 creatures, because each Grave Titan will spawn some dudes, and then they'll attack for the turn, spawning even more dudes, meaning we will get 6 guys when he comes out and 6 guys when our 3 Grave Titans swing. We can also put in a Necron Deathmark, a card that mills us by 3 by also blowing up thing on our opponent's board. Basically perfect for what our deck wants to do. Also, never forget to run as many MDFCs as you possibly can, because they are good. They will give you your vitamins. They are vegetables that you should love. Anyway, we can also run an Archon of Cruelty, a card that, if we spawn a bunch out of our graveyard with our commander, will once again make us all of the friends. I promise you, it makes us gain 3 life and draw a card. That's all. That's all that's written on the card. Don't read the rest of it. I promise you. You won't be happy if you read the rest of it and think about spawning 3 of these at once. Anyway, we have a Wormcoil Engine that when it dies, it makes 2 3/3s. And of course, that means we'll spawn 6 3/3s when our Wormcoil Engines, plural, die to our commander. Let's also put in Ripples of Undeath to mill 3 cards every upkeep and also get things from our graveyard back to our hand. Sundial of the Infinite to end the turn, which allows us to keep our creatures that we created with our commander basically forever. And, you know, you might as well put in things like Reanimate and Animate Dead to just have a more streamlined reanimation base and an Agent of Treachery. Because what's better than 1 Volatile Stormdrake stealing your opponent's favorite cards? 2 Volatile Stormdrakes stealing your favorite cards. That's right, you're correct. For 4 mana, you can get this one, just not the one on screen right now, because stupid-ass blurry avatar reprints are dumb, and we can do much better. There we go. There we go. That looks much better. It's a secret layer, but I promise you, you'll get a lot more respect for using this one. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate you checking out the video. If you want to pick up this deck, then remember to head over to the Moxfield link in the description, click buy deck, and then pick up the deck from Maniple. It's currently $18.20, not counting shipping. After you've got it in your cart, make sure to go to this link here in the description, and this is the Maniple promo link. If you click it, you'll get $5 off on Maniple if you've not used it before. If you have used Maniple before, though, it does still support the channel, so thank you very much a ton for doing that. That said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here again. I've said it before, but I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, because every single view you guys give me gets me closer to being able to do more of these videos far more easily, with a lot less stressed, I promise. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Share this video with a friend if you like what I'm doing, and as always, I'll see you all in the next one.